Hi, my podcast family. I'm back with another podcast on Grieving to Believing. Now, I started my first podcast back in August of this year. Since that time, we've dropped 8 episodes and have many more to share with you. Now, I have interviewed a wide range of losses, but today is going to be one of the most difficult podcasts I have done. Now, I want you to encourage you to stay until the end and witness the grieving journey of 3 courageous mothers who lost their sons in a violent way. A poem for my podcast family today is, "Every woman is strong, but it takes the strongest woman to be a mother of a child with wings." Now, in the natural order of life, children should bury their parents, not the other way around. My guests today experienced the opposite. The 3 are mothers who lost and buried their sons at a very early age. Each one experienced the tragic loss of their sons at the hands of someone else. I am prayerful that today's podcast will offer hope, healing, and faith, not only for them, but for also to others who have had a kindred experience. Now, let's meet these brave mothers. Now, there's Shalitha, who is a member of my church, Desiree, who was a prior member of Cornerstone before joining her husband's church. And then there's my sister, Sandy. Sandy, whose son, Twan, was my beloved nephew. As I said, my guest today is Shalitha, Sandy, and Deirdre. Ladies, thank you so very, very much for agreeing to come and join me today to share your story regarding the loss of your sons. Now, I would like to start by giving the audience, I would like for you to start by giving the audience a glimpse of who your sons were. Would each of you give me a little bit about each of your sons, like his age, his hobbies, his quirks? Was he married? Did he have any children? And anything else that you would like to share with us? Who would like to start? Shalitha.
My son, name was DeQuell Worthy. He was 19 years old. His hobbies were music. He wrote a lot of his own music and rap that we have that we can listen. But he was just an all-around friendly, happy person who loved to give big hugs and I love you and kisses. He played all sports. He was not married and he did not have.
Yeah, now I've known Quell. I knew Quell since he was this high, because he grew up in the church.
Right.
Yeah, and he was a good kid. Sandy.
Okay, my son was Antoine. Antoine, the same like Shalitha's son, loved music. He wrote a lot of his music. He performed music. I used to go to some of his shows. I'd be the only mama there, hollering and everything. He was married. He had 3 kids, Jacory, Mira, and Justin. He started working at age 14, never been in trouble but one time. He was my middle child, and he was just a very humble and nice young man. He was 36, I believe, when he got killed. He loved to cook. I used to go to his house and eat because he was a good cook, and I think he got that from me. So that was a little bit about Antoine.
Or from his auntie.
From his auntie, as she said. But yes, he was very loving, always gave me a hug, and he was good. I have a special need daughter, and he was good in helping me with her.
Go ahead, Dee.
My son was Willie DeAndre. We went by DeAndre. I named him Willie after my father. And for almost 14 years, it was just DeAndre and me until I had my daughter. But DeAndre was the tallest person in our family. He stood about 6'6", had the most beautiful smile, and he was a people person. He loved people. I mean, everyone, and that's amazing to me. Says that he was their best friend. So I think that's a good trait to have. He was a student at Albany State University, but at the time of his death, he was at home. He was trying to switch colleges. He was working. He was 22 years of age. He did not have any children. As I stated, he had a younger sister, Jessica, and little brother, Anthony, an older brother. And he just always wanted to be a big brother, but he wanted to have a little brother. But he had a sister, and he loved her, I think, the most. So that's a good way to describe DeAndre. He was I would say, the jokester of the family.
Good, good. Thank you for sharing that information about your sons. Now, I want to stop for a moment to say this, that if you guys hear some extra noise or chatter in the background, it's because it's my niece. As Sandy said, her daughter has, she's a special needs. So she always wants to be needed. She always wants to be hugged and talked to, and she loves to hug. So, but we're gonna keep going, and just want to let you know if you hear something in the background, that's gonna be Crystal. Let's see. Now, having not been in a position, ladies, of losing a child, I can only imagine the grief that you feel and you felt going through this. Will each of you give me an account of what happened to your sons? How someone tragically took your sons away from you? Deirdre, let's start on this side first.
Okay. Back in 2015, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which would have been the 28th of November, DeAndre left the house around 7-something, headed out. He had not been going out, but he wanted to go out that particular Saturday. So he, as we learned later, hooked up with a so-called friend who he had known since a teenager. They used to play basketball. This particular person used to spend the night at my house, used to come hang out. I would bring him to my house. Never met his parents. They would just come pick him up and carry on. So when he was at Albany State, he happened to run back into this person. Mm-hmm. And so from then on, they started back in communications. So so he left. Usually when he did not come back, he would text me or call and say, I'll see you in the morning.
Okay.
So that particular Sunday morning, I got up and I checked my phone and I was like, no text. I looked out, no car. So my husband and I and the kids went on to church. After church, I would say the spirit is, I didn't feel right when I left for church.
Right.
So when I got in the car, I started calling and the phone was going straight to voicemail. So I knew in my spirit that something was wrong. So when I got home, I began looking around, and then I didn't know what to do. So I got in the car and drove by the job, just driving around, not particularly knowing what I'm looking for. Sunday night came. We still had not heard or anything. So I went out and asked my neighbor across the street if he heard anything. And he said, well, Miss D, called the police. So I said, okay, I'll call the police. So we called the police, and again, because of his age, they were telling us that, at that age, he's probably this or that. And they were asking these questions. Has he ever been arrested? No. Has he ever did this? No. And so they were saying they could not do anything. So my sister, who was a former deputy sheriff, and I and some in-laws, we started calling the hospitals, the jails,
right,
just in case.
The usual places.
Mm-hmm. And so that night, I was I had started looking, because he was on my phone plan, at the last calls that he had made, and I called some of those numbers, and most of those, 2 were from college. One was a guy in the neighborhood, and this neighbor's like, well, no, last time I saw him, we were supposed to go out, but this, that. So as I was sitting there, I heard the spirit again, clearly in my ear say, he's dead, you're not gonna see him again. So of course I broke down or whatever. So that Monday morning, now this is Monday, because he left on Saturday night.
Over 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. We got up and I told my husband, I said, well, let's go to my parents' house and tell them in person that we can't find him. So we went. My dad just sat on the bed quiet, because he said he had known also in his spirit. But my mom, oh, he's fine. He's probably just this or that. So we started riding around this Monday afternoon, and I was calling his friends and said, where do y'all go when y'all go out? So we were riding by clubs, and we didn't know what we were looking for. I, in my spirit, thought that he had in the car accident, and that we probably would find him in the car or something.
Right.
So Monday night came. Well, we went by the police station, and we asked could they run the tag. They said no, they can't do that. So we called first, then we went by, and the lady said she would run it, but she said it came back invalid. So we're wondering, well, why is it saying invalid? So by then it's Monday night. So I remembered that the only person another person I thought he might have been with was that particular guy he met back up with in Albany, but I could not remember how to get to his house because it had been some years. So my nephew knew him also. So my husband and his sisters ended up going to the house, and they were knocking on the door, and finally someone came to the door and handed them a sticky and said, call this number. So when they called the number, the person said, homicide, so-and-so. So they said, well, where's his mom? We need to come speak with his mom. So then I knew. So my husband called me to tell me that they were on the way to the house. So I tried to get the younger kids out the house and before the police came. So they came and they told me on Saturday night they got a call, shots fired. One person was deceased and one person was at Grady Hospital. And they said, your son is. So that's how we found out.
But did they say to you if they knew Saturday, why nobody contacted you at all?
They didn't say it at that time, but we were wondering that as well because when I went to the police station to get the police report, there on the report is the address, my name, because
everything.
Right. So I think that they dropped the ball. Maybe they were at a change of shifts or something. I'm not sure about that. But that's how we found out.
That is okay. I guess it really bothers me because I have witnessed similar situations with Sandy, with her son, and these people want you to vote for them every election, and they don't understand. They have no compassion for not just mothers, but anybody who is looking for somebody that they love and don't know where they are.
Right, because we found out that the young people, as I call them, they already knew. I'm assuming that the guy was in the car that was in him when he got to Grady. He probably started calling or putting it on social media or something. But for some reason, it did not get back to us. Not even my niece, who was on, she was his same age. So we found out Monday night. Everybody else, I guess, knew Sunday, Saturday.
But you knew your spirit, God had already. Sandy?
Okay, how did I find out? Well, it was a Sunday. It was April the 19th, and I had just got home from church. Well, my son, Twan, had been in trouble one time. He had just got out a year, but him and his wife were having some problems, and they locked him up for domestic violence. He didn't put his hand. It was just the stuff that he was saying at the time, and they gave my son a year. So he had just got out, and he didn't supposed to go around the wife, but he could see his kids. And so I had just got home from church, and his son Justin was 11, and Justin wanted to go to the movies. So she came by the house, and I think I had just had surgery on my leg, so I wasn't able to take him with Justin to the movie. So he got in the car with them, and he left. And it was about 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I got a call from Justin. And he said, Grandmama, that man killed my dad. I said, Justin, stop playing. Y'all just left my house. He said, Grandmama, that man shot my dad. And I asked him, where are you all at? And they was down at the Crystals on Evan Mill Road. And this is what I was told, that him and his daughter had a confrontation. She would have been graduating in May. They, you know how some kids is, and her and my son had an argument, and they said that my son was chasing her, and for some reason this man came down the street. They didn't tell me if he saw them arguing I don't know, they still didn't tell me if he saw them arguing. All I know is that this man and his family was coming down the street, and he pulled in the crystals. And when he pulled in the crystals, said he went over and walked up to my son and said he asked him what he was doing. And they said Twan told him to mind his own business. And they said they could tell that they was exchanging words. Don't nobody know what was said. And said the guy pulled the gun out, told my son he had a gun, and said they could hear Twan saying, "I'm not scared of no gun." Well, prior to that, my grandson and Justin said my granddaughter and my son was fighting, and he had pushed Twan off a mirror. They was fighting, and he broke them up, and said the guy pulled the gun out again. He cocked the gun, it didn't go off. Said him and Twan was still up on each other, and said he cocked the gun again, and when he cocked it again, the gun shot Twan up below his breast, and Twan fell to the ground. And said when Twan fell to the ground, some guy in a auto place across the street saw my son fall to the ground. No, before that, they said they could hear the guy's wife telling him, don't shoot that gun, don't shoot that gun. But you in the car with your wife and your 2 kids, and they could hear her telling him, don't shoot the gun, don't shoot the gun. Well, then Twan fell to the ground, and the man across the street saw Twan fall to the ground and said he came over and told the guy to turn Twan over on his side, and said the guy was a nurse. Said he was starting CPR on Twan. And by then, they could hear my granddaughter telling him, "That's my dad, that's my dad. Did you hear me tell you that was my dad?" And then somebody called the police, and the police came. And by the time I got there, they had already taken Twan to the hospital. But the police officer was so nasty with me. She was so nasty with me. I said, "I'm his mom. Where's my son? Didn't I tell you not to come across this line?" I said, "But that's my son." She was so nasty with me. She was a white police officer. She was so nasty with me. So she said, "You need to go to the hospital." I'm like, "What hospital?" "You need to go to the hospital." And then I can't remember, somebody told me Grady. So I got in the car, and I seen my grandson, I seen my daughter-in-law. By then, her nephew had got there, and I didn't see my grandson, and I didn't see my granddaughter. They had already taken them away. And when I got down to Grady's, I had to tell them who I was, and they told me, "Well, you got to wait," because they did not know that my son had been shot. They didn't know that, well, let me go back. When the police came, they said a guy was laying on the ground with the gun on the ground, and the police officer arrested him. Then I went down to the hospital, and because they didn't know if the shooter was still around or what, I had to wait and show my ID. And when I went back there, I'm waiting, crying, everything. And the doctor came out and told me, he said, "I'm sorry, I did all I can." I said, "So you gonna let me go back and see my son?" I did not hear him tell me that my son had died. I didn't hear that part. All I asked him was, "Can I go back and see him?" And then he told me, "Ma'am, no, your son died." And I just broke down. I just fell to the ground. And they didn't supposed to, but one doctor came out and said, "I'm gonna let you see him." And I went back there, and they had Twan covered up, and he did not look like himself or whatever. And we went to court. I stay in DeKalb County. We went to court, and you could hear them in the background saying, my sister went with me. You can hear them in the background saying, "That's murder, that's murder." Well,
Sandy, let me ask you this. Did Twan have any weapon at all?
Twan did not have no weapon on him. He did not touch the guy. He did not have any weapons on him. Well, the guy who shot my son had this lawyer called a singing lawyer. I can remember everything. His grandmother worked for DeKalb County. His wife was a teacher. His grandmother was a pastor. And they gave him a bond. They gave him a bond right then. They gave him a bond. And I waited and waited and waited, and I called and I called and I called. And the first time me and my daughter-in-law got to meet with the DA, and for some reason, she hadn't made no decision. Then I got to go back and meet with her, and she told me that she didn't have enough evidence. First of all, the detective did not have the camera on. I read that in the police report. He did not have the camera on when you was interviewing the guy. He did not have the camera on. In the courtroom, I could tell like they didn't care. I felt like they went back and looked at my son's record. My son started working at 14, never been in trouble. I felt like they went back and looked at his record. To me, that's what they based.
Well, you know, I was there.
That's what they based the case off.
Yeah.
And she looked me in my eye and told me that she decided that she was not gonna charge that guy. And I'm like, but he killed my son. We don't have enough evidence. And to this day, I live in DeKalb County. I would not do nothing for DeKalb County. They can't put no signs in my yard. If I was the only one, and I'm saying this, if I was the only one that she needed a vote, she was the DA, what you say her name was? Boston, Sherry Boston. She wouldn't get no vote for me. I do not do anything for DeKalb County because I felt like they railroaded me.
I can understand you feeling that way. I can understand you feeling that you got, and I know, I was there. I know you got no justice for your son.
And we all like to broke down because we know that my son didn't have no gun. Just cause somebody come up on you, it give you the right to take a gun out and take their life. I still to this day don't understand that. And this guy's walking around, and my grandsons now is going through a hard time. My grandson now is in DeKalb County now. And he only got arrested for failure to appear, and they've been had him in there for 6 months. They know that he's having mental problem because he was the oldest, and him and my son was real close. And now I'm going through this with him because y'all doing him the same way, but it was no justice for my son.
I know.
And this happened in April 2019.
Well, my son, DeQuell, was killed on December the 7th, 2018. Sunday made 7 years since his life was taken. I got a call. Well, first of all, the company that I work for, I had to be to work at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So I got up, went to work. I feel as though that the killer was actually probably outside of my house at the time when I left to go to work, trying to see when I left. But when I got to work, I probably had been to work probably about an hour and a half. And I got a phone call from Quill's friend. And she said, Ma, because Quill always called me Ma, so all his friends and everybody called me Ma. She said, Ma, Quill been shot. And I was like, what you mean he been shot? And she was like,
you just left home?
Yeah. And she was like, and actually earlier before that, like 1 o'clock in the morning, I was getting up, getting ready for work. And I heard him and her come up the stairs, and they were laughing and talking. So, I was like, okay. So when she called me, and I was like, what you mean? And she was like, somebody shot him. And I was like, what? And I was like, well, is he breathing? Did you call the police? And she was like, no, he not breathing. And I'm like, well, did you call the police? And she was like, yeah, I called the police, not knowing she had got shot too. But I was at work, I was downstairs, and I was shaking. And the first thing was to call my mama, my daddy, to let them know to go over to my house at that time till I got there because I was leaving work to go. So I called everybody. I called my dad. I always call him first. I called him. He didn't answer. I called my mama. I called Willie. I called Lionel. Nobody answered the phone that morning. So I was like, oh, Lord, what I'm going to do? So my friends was like, come on, you got to go. I was like, okay. So my cousin that worked with me at the time, some kind of way got in touch with Willie. Willie always answered the phone for him. So he got in touch with him, and Willie got in touch with my parents and told them, hey, Quill's been shot, and y'all need to go to the house. So in the midst of me going home, the subdivision that I lived in was when I came around over the little hill, I could see all of the fire trucks. Everybody was there. So before I got over the hill, it was like a still voice that said, he's gone. So when I just coasted on up, and I coasted and I parked. And when I got out the car, the police was like, it's a crime scene. We can't let you in. And I was like, what you mean you can't let me in? He was like, it's a crime scene, so we can't let you in. And at that time, my uncle was staying with me, and he was sitting outside on the stoop. So I was like, Uncle Howard, what happened? He was like, I don't know. And I'm like, you just a door down from him, a room down from him. You heard nothing, no gunshot, no nothing. He was like, no, I ain't heard nothing, I don't know. I said, okay. But that was the case of what happened. But then later on, I think, because I was like, I didn't see them bringing my son out to go to the hospital. The girl that was with him, they escorted her to the hospital and all of that, but they never brought him out. So when, after everybody had gotten there, my daddy told my friend Melissa at the time, take me up the street, because they were getting ready to bring him out in the bag. So I remember walking up the street, and when I came back down the street, I saw that the coroner was gone, and that's when I broke down. But other than that, that's pretty much what happened. But nobody has been caught, no apprehension.
Nobody has been caught.
No,
They still to this day don't know.
no.
We have 3 mothers here. Each one has lost their son. Deidre, the killer of your son was prosecuted. Do you think there was justice?
I think that any family that had someone murdered, you're never going to feel there was justice. I like Sandy here was in DeKalb County, and I have learned as we went through, we had trials. We were supposed to have 3 trials, but the young man that was with the shooter, his mother eventually convinced him to testify against the shooter. So we ended up with 2 trials back in 17. Now the shooter both of them were 19. The shooter had a rough life. They say he and the non-shooter, they were just running amok. That particular summer, it was on the news, they were robbing women down in Buckhead and just doing all kind of stuff. And I remember that summer watching the news, and there was a story about a lady who lived not far from me, where she was visiting from Paris, and they were trying to rob her. And they pulled up to the relative's house, and she was running towards the door, and they shot her in the back. And I said out loud, well, what did he shoot her for? It just came out. And we found out that that's the same person that murdered my son. So I feel as if, and I told the DA this, well, our prosecutor, so you all just, because eventually, if you're running around robbing and you have a weapon, you're going to end up killing someone. So, and the young man that did not shoot him lived down the road from us, and he was from a single parent home, but the mother worked at night as well, but I don't think she really had control over. She had a son and a daughter. The daughter had a child. The son they were just running amok. And she said that she did not know that the shooter was even living with her. He had been living there. And so when we went to trial for the young man that did not shoot, I could tell when we started going to court that I never held animosity, nor I forgave him. So I felt sorry for him because he was looking at us like he was sorry, right? And so I said, well, how does he know it's us? When you start going through those preliminary trials before you go to court. And then he ended up testifying, but you could tell he was pained in doing it because he didn't want to testify against his friend. So we went to the shooter's trial, and actually that young man just got out in December. He got 15 years to serve 9, and the shooter got 30 years plus 20 because the judge added on 20 for shooting the lady. But I definitely felt at the shooter's trial, I had spoken with the victim advocate. Well, I was sitting in the courtroom, and I heard his attorney say to the prosecutor, if my client says, please guilty to da-da-da-da-da, you'll take the life without parole, because all during the meetings and stuff, she was telling us that she was only going to accept life with no. So I thought that was what I heard. So I asked the victim advocate lady, I said, wait a minute, did I just hear? And she said, well, let me go ask. She came back to that courtroom and she told me, no, that's not what I heard, right? So when they said guilty, then we had a female this time. She stood up and said, Your Honor, I make a motion that I don't know how it goes, run consecutively, or whatever.
Yeah.
Consecutive.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm at that point just sitting there, you know, because I understood what that meant. That means you ain't do life with no parole.
That's right.
So then when they were done, they were all happy, and they came up to me, and they was going to, I said, I was angry. My husband must not have been paying attention. He was shaking their hand. I'm not shaking their hand. So I said, no, that's not what you told me. They were like, well, Miss Stroud, no. You said you were going to do life with no parole. I said, he'll be younger than me when he gets out. I said, and they said, well, he may not get out because, you know, he has to die, but you don't know that. And I might not be here, but why should his siblings and stuff have to keep going before the parole board to make sure, you know, whatever. So, no. The answer to your question is no, I don't feel as if justice was done. And when I went to the last sentencing of the young man that did not shoot him, I was speaking, doing my impact statement, and the judge interrupted me. I said, I was not angry until that point. As I was speaking, I said, well, if were it not for you, you know, she said, let me stop you right there. Just the judge. She said, her name was Jackson. She said, because we get this all the time. We get families that come in here and they're not satisfied. She said, and then you know that there was going to be she kept cutting me off. I was trying to speak. She was like, that there was going to be a deal or whatever. So when she finally stopped talking, I said, well, actually, my husband, my father, and I came expecting to go to trial. And that's when the DA pulled us aside and said, well, there's a deal or whatever. So no, I didn't know. But just the fact that she stopped, I wish I had to gump at the moment to say, well, you know, all due respect, nobody's going to be satisfied when their little one is.
I'd like to ask you, did he ever confess to doing it?
No, he just sat in court with that same, I think he's a psychopath, with that same look on his face. Nobody was in the courtroom for him. No remorse.
Did it ever come out why they did it?
Yes, that's why I feel we had to go to trial. Because the word on the street was that my son was trying to sell them some 5 ounces of marijuana. And I said, well, no. And his friends were coming telling me, no, he didn't even smoke. He didn't, you know, he wasn't doing it. He didn't have no beef with anyone. So the guy that was in the car with me, who I told you I knew, he never came by the house, never said a word. And so I said, because he's the one. That's why he feels good. So when we went to trial, the first trial, the first DA was telling me that it was your son and this and that. This is before we went to trial. And I kept saying, no, because I called her last night. I said, who were they calling? They were calling your son. I said, what phone? He's on his phone. I said, no. So when we get to court, he puts up on the screen the call log between the friend and the non-shooter. And that's when it came out that he wasn't calling Willie. He wasn't calling your son. He was calling you because their attorney, his attorney, actually, it seemed like he was on our, you know, he said, when the guy got up there to testify, he ran up on him and he said, and you're the one that was selling the marijuana, and you're the reason that your friend is dead. And so he had to admit it, but he still did not apologize. I would have thought he would apologize from the stand. He never said a word
Never said, I'm sorry.
to us. And when he was convicted, his attorney turned to us and said, I just want to say to the family that from everything I have heard, your son was a fine young man who never got into trouble, did not deserve to be. So that was, that's all we got.
Now, Sandy, you have shared with us that there was no justice for your son.
None whatsoever.
There wasn't a trial.
Wasn't nothing.
I remember going to you with you and your husband for the hearing, and I was amazed when this person was arrested for murder, and they give him a $2,000 bond.
That's it.
That was
Gave him
it.
a $2,000 bond, and we was like, my sister started crying, I started crying. I'm like, and the judge, she was so nasty to me. Her name was Jackson too. She was so nasty. She was not caring. I'm like, that's all y'all gonna do? And she talking about, I'm sorry, but it was the way she said it. And because of that lawyer was friends with that judge, you could tell that all of them was friends. And it was like, okay, this is another black young man that don't got killed. Come on, let's go to the next. and it was no justice. He got a chance to go home to his kids. My son didn't get a chance to go home to his kids. My granddaughter was getting ready to graduate. He wasn't able to make the graduation. And I just feel like it wasn't no justice.
No.
It wasn't no justice at all.
No.
It's like none of them was on my side. All of them was on that guy's side because of the ties that his grandmother had and the ties that his mom and that lawyer had. And we would, like, my sister broke down and cried. We broke down and cried like, y'all gonna let him get out after he done killed somebody?
Shalitha, I know you have not been able to get justice because the person who killed Quill has not been apprehended.
Correct.
Well, how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm angry because I really feel as though that the person that killed Quill was a friend of Quill's, because actually the day of the incident that it happened had to be someone that knew the layout of my house, because they went in through the garage, which means they had to go in there like the day before or a couple of days before, because they would always hang out in the garage. So they had to.
They knew how to get in the garage.
They had to unhook the lever because I had automatic garages, and you can't let it up.
There was no
unless you do
break-in.
it. Right. So they went in through the garage, and the house was totally dark, and they just walked through the house dark. So in the room that his bedroom, he was not in that bedroom that particular night. He was in another bedroom. So when they went, they opened up the room that he was in, and they closed the door back. No, they actually went in the room that he was in. They opened the door and they closed it back. And according to the young lady, he said, "Who is it? Who is that?" And they didn't say anything. So he got up and went and opened the door. And when he opened the door, I'm angry.
Have you had any contact with the authorities to find out if they're still looking for this person, or what have they decided to do about the case?
They really haven't done anything about the case. It's just that me, my parents, we just try to keep it at the forefront. We keep sending in stuff to them, inquiries and stuff, emailing, calling, going by to see, actually, have they heard anything? Have they investigated anything else? I mean, we've given them stuff, like, hey, this is what happened, or somebody said this, but nothing has been done. And to keep it from going a cold case,
right,
we just try to keep
it in the forefront, let them know that you're not going anywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
You're going to be there.
Absolutely.
Yep. I understand. Ladies, how did this impact your grief? How did you handle this loss that you had?
Well, the day after my son got killed, I'm a member of the church. I wasn't even a member of the church. And my sister told Sister Lawson and Reverend Lawson, and they came to my house. I had a pastor at the time. My own pastor didn't even come to my house. I called him that night and told him that my son got killed. He did not show up at my house, not one time. But this was somebody who they just knew me from my mom's funeral being here. They never met me, but they came to my house and sat down and talked to me. They told me they knew what I was going through because the same thing had happened to their grandson, and they gave me a book on grieving, and that made me feel real good to know that I told everybody, I said, my own pastor didn't even come to my house. I said, but my sister pastor and his wife came to my house. They didn't even know me, but they just came and hugged me and told me, we know what you're going through, and that made me feel good. But it's not a day go by that I don't cry. It's like the doorbell ring. After my son got killed, butterflies kept coming on my porch. And I know people said butterflies come in the place of somebody that don't move on. They'll come on my porch and they'll sit on my arm. They'll fly over me and crust. And I always say, this is Twan. This is Twan. To me, that's my way of thinking, that this is the way God sent him back to let me know, Mama, I'm okay. But I grieve every day. I grieve every day because I didn't get any justice for my son. And every day I go through it. I mean, I try to move on. I tried to forgive. I had to forgive that guy because of my faith. I had to forgive him, but it's something don't never go away because now I'm seeing the effect that it had on my grandkids, on my grandson. He's hurting right now. He's hurting. And, you know, because him and his dad was real close. And now he going through mental stuff because he don't have his dad no more. And, you know, so that's what I'm dealing with every day.
Who's
I'm
next?
sorry, you said, how did the,
The question was, how did this impact your grief? How did you grieve? How did you get through this?
because that was the first significant loss I would say that I had experienced in my life. And like you said earlier, it's not the normal path we think we would take, that our children would go before us. I think that the loss of my son changed me in a way that I now understand. I have a empathetic heart for other who are grieving, especially mothers. And so I have like started my own little mini ministry for moms. Where I kind of take them under my, because I understand how it feels to lose a child. But it has made me more, I think, having to do those two impact statements. I tell everybody, well, I didn't used to talk this much, but having gone through that loss, I just try to, I just try to be nice to people. Try to, because everyone's going through stuff. And actually, his loss, I ended up losing my father and my mother all within under 5 years.
Yeah.
I think that loss prepared me for their loss. So I'd say that I'm a little unusual in the family because even as a child, I was not one of those like my sister. I never had a problem with death. I know we're all going to pass away, and I just feel like it was my son's time to go. One of the ladies at the church said, well, we all want to get our name in the book of life, in the Lamb book of life. And maybe look at it this way, that if God had to choose, he may have left the other one here because he needed more work. And your son's name may have already been in that Lamb's book of life. And so that brought a new perspective for me, and knowing that we're all going to pass away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, we grieve. We miss them because we're their moms. And so I always say that it's okay. If the tears come, they come. Let them fall. I mean, don't try to be strong and all that stuff. But people always say, be strong. I'm like, strong for what?
Yeah.
It's
Because that grief's going to come in waves.
Yeah.
I mean, even though your loss were not last week or last year, it's going to be there. It's going to always be there.
You carried that person for 9 months.
Yeah.
You know, we carried it now. To see that they not here for something sensitive.
You gave them life, and you watched life being taken away from them. You know, so it's and to me, you may grieve a lot of people in your life that passes, but there cannot be anything like the grief, the loss of your child.
Yes,
you only know that if you've experienced it.
Like
I don't
Sandy
want
said,
anybody else to
you
experience it.
carried this child for 9 months. You wondered what it was. You've taken care of yourself. You could take care of them so they can be born, And here they are, some idiot has come along and not respected the life that God gave you.
And one thing that I can remember Sunday, Reverend Lawson said, people come up to you and say, I'm sorry. They can tell us they sorry, but they, when we listen, but until you can go through what us three mothers experience,
till I walk in your shoes,
until they walk in our shoes,
I will
they
never
don't know.
understand
They don't
exactly
understand
how
we feel. They don't understand how we
Shalita,
feel.
would you like to share?
Well, actually, I have not grieved, and I think that's due to the fact that nobody has been apprehended, so it's no closure. I have no closure.
No, you haven't.
Nothing.
That's right.
So I have not grieved. I mean, I cried or whatever, but as far as grieving, I haven't grieved.
I'm sorry. I knew this would be hard, but I know it's hard for you, and I am so proud that you guys decided to share this with me. Anyway, let me run through these notes real quick. Now, ladies, study tells us that up to 84% parents will carry their grief for the loss of their children for the rest of their life. And how do you feel about this study, and do you agree?
Yes, I agree. From to God take me off this earth, I'ma always grieve about my son. No matter what people say, I'ma always grieve. I'ma always feel a loss of my son.
I don't think, for me personally, I don't think, it comes in waves. So I call it, I don't like to call it depression, but I say that sadness, and it hits you at times. I thought it was 10 years for me just passed November 28th, and so you think with time you think, well, it probably won't be as bad or whatever. But I noticed back in October, because I feel it coming, and began to get sad, more sensitive, just crying at anything. And so I was like, well, that spirit is here, that sadness, and it stayed with me for days. But I kept continuing doing my morning ritual prayer and all that kind of stuff. And then, like on a Thursday, it just dissipated. And so I have not been sad through the holidays or anything. But it comes when it comes. And so I think that will, like she's saying, it's going to be with us until we leave this earth.
You agree?
I agree.
Now, during this time, where do you think that you got your strength from? I mean, did it come through prayer, scripture, family? What got you through this?
My strength comes from, first of all, it comes from prayer as well as my family. I had to lean on them a lot, help me get through this because, I've never experienced that, but to have to actually go through that, it was something different, and they never experienced it because their children is still here. But, it hit them different too because that was their grandson that loved on everybody. It wasn't a dull moment with Quail. So my strength comes from, as far as knowing the Lord and believing in God and prayer and just family, period.
Well, my strength come from Crystal because, as my sister said, I have a special need daughter and she loves Twan. And we can just like, sometime I can just hear her in there saying, hey, Twan, and I'm like, who is she talking to? And I go in there and I don't see nobody, and I said, well, he talking to her. And we had flowers that was given to us, and she named the flowers Twan, and I got pictures out in the hallway. And I know, even though it's still hard on me, but I got to keep going for her and prayer and just family. That's where my strength comes from.
And for me, my relationship with the Lord is where my strength comes from because I always felt that DeAndre, and I think that came from the Lord. I thought as a young child he was going to be hit by a car, but I didn't picture him dying. I just thought he was going to be hit by a car. And then when he started driving, he drove so fast that I thought, oh my goodness, he's going to be in a car accident. And then for him to have died in the car, but I also, and I again say this had to come from the spirit of, because who would do this a few days before, about, I don't know, a couple of weeks maybe before he passed, I went in his room and I sat down and I said, well, DeAndre, I think you've had a pretty good life. What do you think? Well, I said, you've done this and you've done, And then maybe 7 days he left the house. My spirit was unrest. And immediately I felt something and I texted him and said, be careful. And he said, I'll be right back. He just had ran to the store and he came back. And so I just look at that as the Lord because, I say he told me that night he's dead. You're not going to see him again. So I think if you have that close relationship with the Lord, he will send the spirit and he will prepare you. And same thing with my parents when they passed. I had a similar experience knowing that they were going to. But because like Shalisa was saying, because this was new to all of us, no one had ever been murdered. My family, like I said, I'm the strange one, did not really support me in that way because they were dealing with it themselves and they kind of quiet and never talked about stuff because I said I'm the only one. My strength at the moment came from his friends who always came to see me and checked on me, brought me little gifts and stuff. So I really, really was happy to have those individuals in my life, and a few of them are still here. So I always say that God gives you what you need.
Yeah. And sometimes hard to understand, but He never puts more on you than you can. And I don't know where your strength is right now, Shalita, but the one thing that I have noticed about you over the years, singing in the choir, Shalita used to sing in the choir, and Shalita would be, yeah, 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 yeah. But over the years, she has gotten, hey, you know. So her spirit.
But she always had that smile, see? And that throws people
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
I was like, she's smiling, but you okay?
Yeah, her spirit has really evolved, you know. And I'm all, and every time I see you, I smile to say, she's changed. There's a change about her. If you guys could spend one more moment with your son, what would you do?
I would hug him and not let him go.
If I could spend one more moment with Antoine, we'll be somewhere dancing. And I'll be singing the raps and stuff with him. I would hug him, and if I could get back that day, I think I would have took them. I always sit and think that if it could have been different, I wish I would have took them to the movie instead of letting him get in that car, because I knew him and his daughter. He had told me they had some words, but I didn't know it was gonna get that bad.
Right.
Yeah, I would have took him and his son to the movie instead of letting him get in that car that day.
The same. If I had one more moment, though, when he left the house, I would have said, oh, I love you. But we were watching, it was the Saturday after Thanksgiving, so we were watching old videos and laughing, and look at you, DeAndre, and you, and that was the last time we saw him. So if I had another moment with him, I would hug him like Shirley just said and just tell him I love him.
Now, is there anything that brings you peace and comfort now?
Just the memories that I have, or we may be, even like with my grandson, they may do something like what Quill would do and be like, oh, that's Quill coming out of them right there, because one thing about it, he loved his nephews, hands down, no matter what, he loved his nephew. So it was just be like the memories that he have, and then sometime I listen to some of his music just to like hear his voice.
Good.
For me, with his oldest son, Jacory, when he was born, and it was so funny, when he was born, the doctor went to give him to Antoine, and Antoine like to fainted, so they couldn't give him to him. So the doctor brought him over there and gave him to me, and he put his little hand around me, and we've been two peas in a pod ever since, and that helped me to know, even though Antoine gone, but I have Jacory Antoine. So that give me, just knowing that even though my son not here, and he looked like my son, so
yep, he does.
He looked like my son, so it just him, just me being close to him, that helps me.
So what brings me the most peace is believing that DeAndre knew the Lord for himself, and that when he had his service, the youth pastor gave his eulogy, and he told us, he said, when first he called and he said, what happened to DeAndre? He said, I just saw DeAndre. And so at the service, he said, I just saw DeAndre the Sunday before he was murdered. He was at church, and I just happened to run into him in the hallway. He hadn't seen him. And he said, he was so tall, so I looked up, and he gave that smile, and, I asked him, how was the girls treating me? I asked him 3 questions. And I just was so proud of that, because a lot of young people don't go to church, and he didn't go to church with us. He said we stayed too long. So he would get up and go himself, and he went to the church before. So that just brings me hope and joy in my heart that he is, that he knew the Lord for himself. So I always pray that all the children, because you can't get into heaven by your mother, your grandmother, you got to have that relationship for yourself.
Yeah, you have to have that relationship with God. Yes, yes. Now, is there a family tradition that you have established to remember or celebrate your son? Is there anything special that you do just to celebrate him, or start a tradition?
I go to the grave site quite often, whether it be, like, let's say if I have a dentist, then I would go by the grave 2 minutes from the dentist's office, and same with my mom or my dad. Just last night, I went to a party that was like right up the street. So at 11 o'clock at night last
made a
night,
pi- you made a-
I
you
drove
made a
to the
stop- you made a
cemetery and
stop.
said, "Hey, Quail," and kept going. But yeah, you know, we visit the cemetery, and then we, as we say, you know, we keep it to the forefront, as in far as contacting Fulton County
Yeah.
every year, till we hopefully one day we'll get closure.
Yeah, I pray that you do.
Well, with me, I go on his birthdays and I go on the day that he,
Or the day you even think about him, you go.
the day that I think about him. It ain't nothing for me to drive from Decatur because he's buried in Atlanta. I go by there and just get out and say, "Oh, baby, I just had to tell you this." Just go by there and
Or
talk
y'all,
to
I
him.
ask, where you at? Where are you? Well, Krista and I out putting balloons on Twan's grave. Yeah.
And his godparents and I, we've been attending the whole 10 years. We go to the graveside again on his birthday, and he was born at 8:21 p.m. So we always count down, and at 8:21 we release a balloon. We just say happy birthday, DeAndre. So that's what we've been doing. And other than that, just talking about him, like Shalita said, he left a treasure of videos and pictures. I love those type of things. So just to have that is good.
Something
Go
to
back
actually to
and
physically
look at
put
it.
your hands on to remember him. Yeah. Yeah, that's always a good thing, you know, even for any death, you know, it's always to have those men. Okay, because your sons were taken from you through an act of violence, how did the loss impact the way you see the world now? And I think you guys have kind of hit on that a little bit about how you feel about the way the Justice Department handled what happened to you, you know. And I got the message that it was very negative. Neither one of you felt like that they handled it correctly, or they handled it with any empathy or any concern.
I'm sure Sandy and I probably had the same judge, and I said at the time, they're so used to these cases of black young men killing other black young men that it's become just null for them. It's the same case, really, in their minds. So they're just, you know, how can we get rid of this?
You know, and that was one thing I was wondering. If you have not gotten justice, is it because it was a black on black crime? I mean, is that something that you have thought about or considered?
Especially when they're young.
Yep.
They feel as though that
They did something.
they did something to deserve it.
Right.
That's the way I feel. Yep.
But you know, my thoughts are, I don't care how bad a person is,
Right.
that still does not give
You're
somebody
right,
the right
exactly.
to walk up and take their life.
I agree. Right.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, that's totally different. You know, they hadn't murdered anybody or killed, or raped, or stolen. You know, so you know, maybe their life wasn't perfect, but it wasn't the point that somebody should not be penalized for
They're
taking
not,
a life.
yeah, they're not allowing them to even grow. Because I say they're doing the same thing they did when I was young. They were just not murdered for it. And so, you know, when you do dumb stuff when you're young and you get old and you say, oh, you remember we did so and so and so and so, but they're being murdered at a young age because of some dumb act.
And I don't know where the younger generation get the idea that it's all right to kill somebody,
Right.
to walk up and take somebody's life. I don't understand.
The thought process.
You know, I mean, when we were growing up, you know, you didn't want to do anything to go to jail.
Right.
You know?
I know
But-
that young man that killed my son has killed someone before, because I'm telling you, he looked like a sociopath. And the way he shot him, they were sitting in the car and the car was running because my son was driving. He was on the passenger side because, again, the passenger was conducting the business. So when he shot my son first. He shot him in the head, so he was instantly dead. And then because the car was on his foot, hit the gas pedal, and the car propelled across the road and hit a tree, caught on fire. Then the young man got out and ran, but my son burnt in the car. So I said that, I told them that, I said, well, he has killed someone before, and y'all just don't know it. Because from the testimony after that, they went out and partied or whatever they do. And the young man that was in the car with him that didn't actually shoot him, from the testimony, he was shooken by the experience because he had probably never seen it before. But that young man that killed him, I believe, had killed someone before.
Because he did not find it very hard to take somebody's life.
Not at all.
Did either one of you, and I think through the conversation, you answered this question for me already. I was going to ask you about, did either of you lose your faith in God as a result of your child's death? And if so, how did it get you through from grieving to believing?
I never lost my.
I knew God. It's like I got stronger. I got stronger to God instead of I got closer to God than, because I knew God didn't have nothing to do, so I couldn't blame him.
So you believe that your grieving got you to the point where you believe, like you said, God did not do this. Somebody else had a gun in their hand and they did this. So your belief is that your grief will get.
That God is the one that's keeping us.
Yeah.
That's
Keeping us.
Otherwise, if we didn't know the Lord, we
That's
would
right.
feel
I feel like if I didn't know him and dealing with what I deal with every day, having a special need daughter, if I didn't, it's the same with her. I didn't do nothing, so I know, if I didn't have the faith in God, it'll be hard. I'm 63, she's 41, and it's anybody that have a special need child, no, it doesn't get easy. It's get harder every day for me. But I know with my faith in God, it helps me to get through taking care of her and dealing with my son.
Now, what encouragement do you have to that you would give to another mother who's grieving the loss of their child? Is there anything that you would like to share with someone who's listening to this podcast to let them know that it's not going to get better? It may get a little easier, with the understanding that you have in God. But what encouragement would you give them to help them to keep going on?
Well, one thing I was said, don't let nobody. I was told, why you still grieving? He gone. Why you still grieving? He gone. But I would tell this mama, don't let nobody tell you to stop grieving over your child. I'm like, why would somebody tell you that? But it has been said, why is you still grieving? He gone. He ain't gonna come back because I gave birth to him. I carried him from 9 months. And I would tell any mama that's going through this, just keep your head up, keep looking up to God. It doesn't get easier. I mean, it don't go away, but through time, to me, it get a little easier where, the crying is not as much as it used to be. I'm gonna cry for the rest of my life, but the crying is not. I can be crying and the next thing I look up and I'm thinking about something silly he done did. And I start laughing. So don't let nobody tell you to stop grieving over your child. And just keep believing that, even though that guy, they did not arrest him, but I believe in my heart that God is weighing on his heart for what he did. So
He's not having an easy life.
he's not having an easy life for killing somebody that you didn't even know. Yeah.
Said exactly what I would say, because people try to tell you how to
Tell you
grieve.
how to
But
grieve.
that's what I say.
Yeah.
Unless you've lost a child, you really don't know what we're feeling.
That's right.
But I also, because I told you I have a little mini group that they call me, and we just try to encourage each other because they know that I understand, and they have said, well, we like talking to you because you're not a trained professional per se, but you understand, so it's better because you've been there. And so I would just say, have a close relationship with the Lord, and then he'll show you your purpose, because we all have a purpose. And I have found that my purpose is, I work at the school. I came out of retirement and I'm the parent liaison. I love the job. It allows me to work with parents when we get them to come and children as well. So I just share my story and try to encourage them, because no one knows what you've gone through, and we all have testimonies, and I believe in sharing your testimony.
And we've all gone through death. I am so fortunate that I haven't had to walk in your shoes, so I don't know the depths of your grief.
Right.
I may know the grief of losing a parent. or a sibling or even a spouse. But there has to be a different type of grief. Number one, when you lose your son, and number two, when you lose that child through a violent act that somebody else has performed.
Amen.
You know, it cannot be the same. My scripture today for you guys is Matthew 5:4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now, in this beatitude, Jesus declared that those who mourn are blessed, for they will receive comfort. Now, this verse speaks directly to grief-stricken hearts of individuals who have experienced the loss of a child. It serves as a reminder that even our deepest sorrow, there is promise of solace and support from God Himself. Jesus sees our pain and promised to bring comfort to our soul. But you know what? I did this before we sat down, and I realized, you guys realize this already. You know, this is what you've already talked about and told me, you know, so I was so glad that I picked this verse because it's something that you guys already believe.
Yeah, we can testify to that.
Right.
Yes, yes. Ladies, I want to apologize. I want to applaud you for your courage and strength in joining me today. You know, I always say everyone grieves differently, and there's so many ways of grieving, and there's so many levels. You showed us that 3 mothers who have gone through the same tragic loss of losing a child, their son, having navigated the difficult path of grief. Thank you for touching so many hearts today with your journey. This podcast was so amazing that I believe that we're going to have to do 2 parts. And if you, my audience, missed the first part, you could always go back to YouTube and pick it up, and then you can continue with the second part. It was so heartwarming to have Shalita, Deirdre, and Sandy take us on their journey of grieving to believing.
Thank you for having me.
You know what? I had to pray about asking you ladies to come on the podcast because in my heart, I felt and I knew some of the pain that you had to be going through. And I approached each one of you, and it just did my heart good for you to agree to come and share your journey, because I know it has to be hard, and it has to be devastating to relive this, but I want to thank you for doing it for me.
No, the reason because you my sister, and that was your nephew, and I thank God for you because you was there with me every step of the way. You didn't leave me. Every day my sister was there. Both of my sisters was there every day up until the end. When I called her, she said, "You want me to come?" I said, "No, you ain't got to come down here. I'm all right." But she was there the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day. She went to court with me. She went to the funeral home with me. She helped me make the plan. So I just want to thank you for being my big sister and one of my biggest supporters. I love you so much.
I love you too. In fact, I love all you. I'm sorry, I only knew you from the grief section you did here and through your parents.
Yeah.
But to have parents like that, I still had to love you. They were amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you again. And to my podcast family, thank you for your support. We will continue to show how to get from grieving to believing. And if you would share your journey, I'd love to hear from you. Just contact me at Chris Green 7283 at Comcast.net and email me. Leave a comment on the podcast. I would love to have you on my podcast. And Deirdre, I've asked you to come back again when you have the time and share with us some of the experiences you've experienced just being the grief counselor and working with people who have to go through this every.
I will.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you, thank you. Please share, like, and hit that bell. It costs you nothing, and you will hear some of the most amazing stories out there. How people are getting through their loss, their grief, and I know something will be said that will help you along your way as well. Love you.